had to crack out the cassowary shirt, given the subject matter is killer animals in this film. Now, this is such an interesting movie. This Malayalam thriller is billed as a typical like man versus beast story, and when people told me to watch it, I thought that the draw or the twist of this film might be the fact that it's a buffalo, not a lion or tiger or shark or some shit we've seen before. Like, I thought that was going to be the draw of this movie. And about halfway through this movie, it started to click what it was actually about, and that's when this movie gets really quite uncomfortable. This movie is it's a window into mob mentality and the dangers of mob mentality. It doesn't handle it in a clunky, stupid way like Halloween Kills does, but in a more realistic and primal way. Now, I can't speak to the dangers of a mob that's been whipped into a frenzy due to, environment and injustice in India, right? I have never lived in India, though I have seen some pretty scary news stories come out of there about events involving mobs, and I have to imagine with such a high population count, shit can get squirrely pretty fast. But once again, I'm not Indian, so I don't know. However, when I was growing up, I lived in a place called Logan, and about 10 to 12 years ago now, there was an event that happened between two groups in the community. I'm not going to get into it. If you want the details, you can go YouTube Woodridge riots. I'm sure it'll pop up. But an event happened, and it seemed quite small, a small group of people involved, but more and more and more people just kept getting involved as this thing. Like, people were traveling in from other areas to Logan to come join both groups, and things got out of hand really fast. There was an energy and a tension in the streets that you could feel. Like, you could feel the boiling point of it as you just went about your day. You're like, oh shit, it's thick here. The tension is thick. There were lots of cops. There was lots of weapons being brought out. There were brawls erupting here and there. Like, I saw a bunch of them. I remember in a scuffle, like, a teenager got hit. Some adult male pulled a fence paling off just a fence he was walking by and just belted a teenager, like a young teenager. It's crazy shit. It was wild, and it went on for 3 or 4 days, right? Like, it just more people kept coming in, the tension kept ratcheting up. I had mates in both communities, and they stopped going to school because they either wanted to be home to help out in case something happened, or their parents didn't want them on the streets possibly being targeted. It's pretty fucking full on. That slow ratcheting up of energy, the constant trickling of new people getting involved, and the constant spot fires and scuffles, that is all portrayed really well in this movie. LJP must have seen this before in person, or at least studied the hell out of this situation, because while it's very clearly acted, it felt like I was watching it in real time. Jallikattu follows the story of a buffalo that manages to escape a slaughterhouse in a remote village in Kerala. The buffalo knocks over a bunch of stuff and causes a bit of mayhem, so the men decide to go off and hunt the buffalo together to put an end to the chaos. As the buffalo keeps getting away and continuing its rampage, more men get involved, more groups come in. The groups start to splinter and infighting occurs, and unfortunately, like most stories involving an angry mob, violence is quick to follow, and that's basically what happens in this film. I really like this movie. Now, caveat, for about the first 40 minutes of the film, I was thinking, Jesus Christ, would it really be this hard to catch a buffalo? These guys are fucking awful at catching a buffalo. Why, and I started to get a little annoyed at the movie, and then I realized, the big waving red flag of what this movie is actually about, and it ain't the buffalo hunt, right? That's just the catalyst for the movie. In this movie, there are 6 or 7 little side plots going on, and originally I thought they were thrown in for filler or flavor, but as the movie goes on, you realize that the things happening in those subplots are painting a far darker picture of what happens when you get a bunch of men together hyped up on like testosterone, booze, and each other. All the men in this movie get more and more awful as the movie goes on, and it perfectly encapsulates the de-evolution of man, even really hammering that point home at the end. This movie is asking you to read between the lines of these subplots and what else might be happening in the village as well. And when you realize that, this movie gets really fucking uncomfortable. I really, truly love animals, and I thought this was just going to be a movie where I spent the whole time cheering for a buffalo as it ran through swaths of men and killed them, which I would have been happy with too. But this is a far smarter film than it wants you to believe at the start, right? I was also worried there wouldn't be any actual death in the movie because they keep stepping up to the line and then they pull back. But thankfully, LJP, who's the director, and the writers, S Hareesh and R Jayakumar, they take the plunge in this movie. They go like, there needs to be at least a death or two. Like, and this is a better movie for it, right? If there had been no deaths in this movie, I would have been pretty shitty because it just wouldn't have hit as hard. But they thankfully take the plunge. The acting is great from pretty much all the cast. This is a movie where you're pretty much not like a single person, and that's okay. That's actually probably better in this film. It also does an amazing job at putting you in the shoes of the buffalo, especially in a scene involving like a hole in the ground. The viewpoint just really, really hammers home how horrifying groups of people are. There's like tribal whooping, and there's lots of yelling, and there's lots of light and fire, and it's just fucking horrific. Like, it makes you really think about like situations where animals are subjected to that sort of stuff. Like, it was really good. As with pretty much any Malayalam film, the cinematography is stunning. The setting is beautiful. Like, it's truly picturesque. That is what I've come to realize quickly, is that all the films are beautiful. Like, they're all shot beautifully. The settings are beautiful. The music in this also really does so much for the uneasiness in this film. They cleverly use lots of like drums and percussion, and also like tribal chanting to really hammer that primal feel home, and it just works wonderfully. I think the only people who might not like this film are the people that miss the true target of the film. If you're going in wanting a man versus beast story, this is not one, and I can completely understand that because, like I said, for 30 or 40 minutes, that's what I thought this movie was going to be about, and I thought that's what this movie was about. This movie also asks you to extrapolate a bit. It makes you think like, okay, so these people are acting like this in the middle of the street in front of all these people. What might be people doing in the shadows away from the street? Like, if that's how these guys are acting, how do you think these guys might be acting? Who else might be in danger in this scenario? And some of the subplots do answer that question a little bit. But I think if you miss that point entirely, because it is intentionally subtle, like LJP has made that intentionally subtle, you probably won't get what a lot of people, I think, get out of this movie, including myself, and that is a fucking harrowing look at what happens in the dark when attention is elsewhere. Like, it's good. This is a good movie. I recommend watching this if you love social horrors, right? Horrors about people doing shitty things and their behaviour towards one another. If you want a quick Malayalam film, I know, they exist. This is the first one. I didn't know they existed. Guys, this is a 90-minute film. I was truly expecting another 3-hour epic, which I'm used to. I'm perfectly fine with. I'm used to films from Kerala being 3-hour epics. But this was like quick, tense, to the point. It was really good. If you love animal attack movies but root for the animal, like I said, this really does put you in the perspective of the buffalo for a lot of it, which is good. I don't recommend watching this if you have a low tolerance for animal harm, or even, like, I guess I'd call it cooking gore. Like, there's a lot of meat being prepared in this movie, and beheadings and of animals and that sort of stuff for food. So if you've got a low tolerance for that, probably stay away from this. If you don't like realistic violence, where this goes is quite dark, and it could very well happen on a lot of places on the planet. The only acting thing I didn't like about this film is, like, there are some janky pratfalls. Like, there are a few extras who go a little bit over the top. They go a little bit hard on, like, the whoa, like when the buffalo's riding past, they're like, oh, And like I was a bit like, all right, guys. Like after 3 or 4 of them, I was like, it's getting a bit comical, but it's very fleeting. But if you have a low tolerance for that, you might want to stay away from this one. If you have seen this movie, let me know what you think. I can see some people loving this and some people hating it, and I definitely think that's because it pulls a really good switch up on the bad guy. If these movies are what fuck me, I'm going to do that a lot, sorry. If these movies are what LJP are about, I'm pretty fucking pumped to see Churley later this month. It's on the bill, so I will be seeing that one. If you like this movie but wanted it to just be like Man vs. Beast, for my money, the best Man vs. Beast story of all time is The Ghost in the Darkness. It stars Val Kilmer and Michael Douglas. It's 2 hunters are called in to kill a pair of lions who were real. Like, these lions existed. They've got a Wikipedia, man-eaters of Savo. The lions have killed dozens and dozens of railroad workers in Kenya in the early 1900s. So they hire these guys to come in and basically hunt them. It's a fucking masterpiece, and I don't like trophy hunting, but I root for the animals almost all the time. I still like this movie. That's how fucking good it is. Another one is, if you want something with a similar vibe about how awful humans can be to each other, there's an Aussie indie horror film, 2024, called Bird Eater. It's about a group of guys who go away on a remote bucks party, and they're sort of like hooligans and pissheads. They're sort of like one of the groups in Jallikattu. And as the bucks party goes on, they get more and more intense and more competitive, and it's truly wild. It's a truly wild and psychedelic film, and it perfectly illustrates the fucked up things men do to each other in the name of tradition. It's really, it's a fucking good one if you can get your hands on it. As always, thanks for watching. Don't forget, we're coming up to halfway through Spooktober. I'm doing one of these reviews for a film I haven't seen every day of October. So if you do want to follow along, subscribe, hit the bell. That's the easiest way. But yeah, hopefully I'll see you tomorrow for another review. Peace.